Our brains are wired to be biased, not because we're bad people, but because it's a shortcut. It's a way of really accelerating or making more efficient, more effective the way that we process information. Distributors actually suffer from that same glitch. This is Innovation Currency. My name is Leigh-Ann Buchanan, and I am your host. What I want this podcast to help people see about themselves is that innovation is for everyone, and everyone is an innovator. I developed a simple test, a quiz, if you will, to help anyone discover their hidden innovation traits from across 4 specific domains: disruptor, connector, distributor, and influencer. If you haven't already taken the quiz, please stop, take a pause, and go by visiting my website, www.leannbuchanan.com/innovator quiz. Welcome to Innovation Currency. I'm Leigh-Ann Buchanan, and we're here to reimagine the stories we tell about who qualifies as an innovator and provide practical tools to help anyone discover their hidden innovator. If you have listened to prior episodes or you've seen my TEDx talk, then you already know that I developed the Innovation Currency framework, which was actually created through years of research and observation of different innovators, everyday people in spaces designed to accelerate innovation activity. Today, we're going to focus on the distributor style. So, what makes a distributor special? Distributor superpower really lies in their ability to accurately assess the value of just about anything. When I think about a distributor, I automatically think of the plug. You know, that person that you can say one word and they can tell you how to get it, how much it will cost, and who to talk to for a discount. They're the ones that are able to procure a resource or just about anything that's needed when you need it the most. If you are a distributor, you encourage others to reimagine who ascribes worth and how we calculate the value of people, places, products, ideas, things, and experiences. You are, as I mentioned, the ultimate plug because you're so generous in how you help people kind of reallocate capital and resources from the places that need it to the people who lack access. Now, what is it that distributors actually focus on? It's value. And when we think about the definition of value, value describes the importance or worth or usefulness of a given thing. When it comes to people, there's so many instances in which we fail to really give people the value that they're due. We often let kind of societal norms and beliefs about groups of people or different places, and we discount them. We minimize their worth. Now, our distributors are able to break that mold completely. Now, what are distributors' superpowers? Well, they have the power to create access points to the right resources for whom and whenever they are needed. And the distributor's secret weapon is actually capital or currency, because they can trade and transact using multiple forms of capital in an effort to level the playing field. And often when we talk about capital, the first thing that comes to mind is straight up money. And money is the most common form of capital that we think about, financial capital. But when it comes to distributors, there are often different forms of capital that they really understand how to identify and kind of distribute. Now, there is financial capital, as we talked about, which refers to the monetary value of a thing. There's also creative capital, which relates to how people can create things. There's capacity capital, which relates to the ability to learn something new or develop a skill. There is one of my favorites, the inspiration capital, which really refers to being exposed to someone who has achieved value, acclaim, or success, or holds power, and their lived experience reflects yours. And then finally, social capital, which is all about the value of relationships and networks. And distributors are able to really quickly identify the form of capital that they are working with and make sure that people who lack access can actually have some. Now, distributors have areas of growth just like any other innovator type, and they have a tendency to engage in favoritism. They are often susceptible to distributing resources to people or platforms that they are just most familiar with. It's actually pretty common. You will likely navigate and be attracted to things with which you are most familiar. Our brains are wired to be biased, not because we're bad people, but because it's a shortcut. It's a way of really accelerating or making more efficient and more effective the way that we process information. Distributors actually suffer from that same glitch. Now, at times, distributors' decision-making may suffer from superficiality. This could present as ignoring the inherent worth of a product, a service, or experience, and instead calculating the value of something exclusively as the price of the individual that is willing to pay. And so an example of this is from my own life. I have a tendency to love Apple products. I have an iPhone, I actually have two iPhones, an iPad, a Mac computer, an Apple Pencil. But my sister, on the other hand, is an Android person. And she often accuses me of just picking Apple products because they're made by Apple. Not because they're any better than Android, but just because of the name brand. That's a common example of what we're talking about in practice, which is distributors sometimes have a tendency to pick something because someone else has decided that it's high value, rather than taking the time to really investigate what's underlying the name brand. And if you work with distributors, the most supportive environment you can provide for this innovator style is one in which they are given the agency to invest at their own discretion. Now, that investment can mean time, it could mean money, it could mean talent, whatever. They just have to have the agency to be able to invest resources without much limitation. Provide them with the opportunity to direct money and resources to whoever they determine really needs it. Because more likely than not, distributors are going to tap into their superpower and recognize where there are inequalities or unequal distribution and really solve for that gap. Now, we've talked a lot about what distributors do well, which is they're able to just reimagine how we value things, particularly things that are overlooked and underestimated. We talked a little bit about where distributors often go wrong, where they make short-sighted evaluations rather than really doing deep investigations. And you might be wondering at this point, well, what does that mean to me? How do I apply this thinking, these insights to my everyday life? I want to give you an example, as I've done in other episodes for other innovation styles, of one of the projects that I've worked on from my career. And the project that I'm going to tell you about, I think, really reflects the innovator type, the distributor innovator type in practice. So I live in Miami, Florida, and during the pandemic, Miami kind of became the place to be. Well, you could be outside, we didn't have as many restrictions, and what we saw in Miami was this huge influx of people coming from the tech area of Silicon Valley to Miami. We had entire venture capital firms move. We had companies move, founders move. So many people came from New York and Silicon Valley and other hubs in Latin America who were tech entrepreneurs to build their companies in Miami. And really, Miami became positioned as the next big tech hub of the world. And at some point, we were seeing upwards of 900 people a day move to Miami. Now, among that influx, there was folks like myself who were part of the existing technology community that said, well, how do we ensure that some of the disruption that a growing tech industry has had in the social dynamic of other communities will not happen here. I'm an innovator, but if I'm being honest with you, I couldn't always call myself an innovator. I've spent the better part of a decade launching and leading projects designed to help everyday people access their innovation potential. It's included projects that have unlocked over $75 million for things that bridge gaps in access, opportunity, and equity. When I transitioned from being a trial attorney to leading organizations in the innovation space, what I really needed was a guide to help me answer two critical questions. Am I an innovator? And what type of innovator am I? The problem is that our society and our own identity serve as barriers to keep our powerful potential as innovators locked away and hidden. Innovation Currency is the book that is designed to help you discover your hidden innovator. If you've ever wondered what innovation looks like for you, how you might use innovation in your day-to-day life, or how you can use innovation to help solve some of the most pressing challenges in the world, or even your workplace or community, then please grab your copy of Innovation Currency, because I can assure you that after reading it, you'll have the tools, the experience, and the translatable skills to unlock your hidden innovator. To find out where you can purchase your copy in whatever format makes sense for you, scroll down to the show notes for the appropriate links. And it really started with a text message among myself, a friend at a local foundation, and another friend at a community foundation, where we started to talk about what could be done. How could we make sure that this tech boom didn't leave our community with a bust? And ultimately, I was tasked to help design some type of framework, which is really kind of tapping into my disruptor superpower. And what we ultimately created was an initiative that actually spun out into its own organization called Tech Equity Miami. Now, Tech Equity Miami is a target $100 million philanthropic funders consortium that had a goal of deploying $100 million into different organizations and initiatives that create greater equity through tech. We decided to focus on a couple of key areas where we saw the most unequal distribution of philanthropic resources, but really the most need. Digital connectivity, how people from underrepresented or under-resourced backgrounds could actually get online. And this was before the federal legislation that made sure internet for all was a priority. K-12 educational experiences to make sure that students who wanted to become computer scientists, wanted to become technologists in 10, 15, 20 years had the computational skill sets that they needed to ensure that those careers could be a possibility. Talent, looking at how we might remove the financial and social barriers that prevented people from changing or upskilling or accessing tech-based careers, which on average commanded a much higher salary than the traditionally lower wage, low skilled jobs that were prevalent in the hospitality industry. For example, at the time, the average hospitality job had an annual salary of maybe around $40,000 a year, whereas a technology job created a leapfrog effect of a salary to about $90,000 to $100,000 a year with just a short intervention from a boot camp or an upskilling program. And finally, small businesses. Ensuring that the small business community that actually represented over 50% of the firms in our market would not be left behind because they had not yet encountered and implemented a digital transformation, making sure that their business models could really adapt to the 21st century. Not just thinking about AI, but for the brick and mortar businesses that were selling products, make sure they actually had an e-commerce platform, a Shopify, so that they can sell to customers well beyond those that came through the door. Now, in just less than a year, we had actually been able to launch Tech Equity with $55 million in initial commitments from different philanthropic funders, from the private and the public and the traditional foundations. And that included a $10 million commitment from our friends at JP Morgan Chase. But what made this innovative model, really unique, was how we designed it. We designed this consortium so that different members, those organizations that would pledge dollars to be deployed into projects that we pre-designated as meeting the criteria for the right outcomes that we cared about, could do so through their own existing vehicles. They didn't have to pool their dollars in the same bank account. They had a private foundation as a corporate. The dollars could flow through the foundation, but the dollars would count towards our $100 million goal. The second thing that made this project really unique was that it allowed for our members to really have a multiplier on the return of their investment. Instead of just putting $1 million into a project, they could pool their dollars with other members to maybe $5 million into a given project and then claim the win for the $5 million because they were co-investing, much like you would see in the private sector. And finally, what made this project really unique as we think about the distributor profile is it focused on quantifying the impact or quantifying the outcomes of the dollars that were invested into many different projects in the same way, such that any project in the K-12 space would report out on the same outcomes as any other project in the K-12 space. Now, when we think about the distributor profile, this is really unique because it allows for a leveled playing field. It allows us to understand how effective the dollars are and really ensure that things are distributed equally. Now, that's just one example from my personal life where the real takeaway from this distributor project in action was that if we can reallocate the pathways that funding flows, we can yield better social returns. I'm sure you have an example of a distributor type innovation in your day-to-day life. And so this is the moment we're going to translate all of this talking, all of this thinking, all of these ideas into practice. Now, if you are a tactile person, why don't you grab a pen, a piece of paper? If technology is your go-to, why don't you take your favorite note-taking app and open it up on your phone, your tablet, or your computer, and start to think about your individual responses to the following questions. First, what is an example of the distributor innovation style in practice that you've encountered either directly or observed in the media or through research? Second, as you think about this example, how does it really align with how we've described the distributor style in terms of its strengths, superpowers, weaknesses, and growth opportunities? Third, what's an example of the distributor innovation style from your own life or from projects that you have launched in the past? Fourth, is there a resource like money, opportunity, or a tangible thing that you want to see distributed or accessed differently? If so, why? And finally, as you think about how you would approach that specific resource that you want to see accessed differently, how is your approach new or different from existing solutions? Now, by no means is this list of questions exhaustive, and as you begin to really put your distributor innovator style into practice, I'm sure you'll come up with more questions. But this is designed to give you a blueprint of sorts, a foundation to begin to really hone your skill and put it into practice. After all, innovation is truly a process, and it is the process of doing, not just thinking. Now, I hope that what we've talked about today, everything relating to how we value and ascribe worth to things, people, places, experiences, ideas, and things, has sparked something in your mind, and I hope it resonates with you. If that's the case, please take a moment to like, share, or even leave a review or comment on the streaming platform where you are listening and or watching this episode. And I look forward to joining you again on another episode of Innovation Currency. Thanks.